just to be clear for those who are asking in the chat, this lab was designed by Sid just for this demonstration. There is no lab for this that is available online. The ability to do some of this in the Fuel virtual lab that's available that I mentioned earlier, that is not the case. We will see if we can possibly add that in the future, but this is a low priority, and we've got a couple other things we're looking to add to the virtual lab before this. So, Sid, are you ready to take back over?
Yep.
All yours.
Okay. So you need to define a root CA, and you can also define an intermediate CA that will be used to sign or sign a GP certificate, one for portal and one for gateway. These root CA and intermediate CA should be called in the satellite firewall as well as in the gateway firewall. So for simplicity, you can define the certificate on the portal firewall and call it in the satellite firewall as well as on the gateway firewall. I'll show you what I did in my lab and how I exported it and imported it in the gateway and satellite firewall. SSL TLS profile is important. In this profile, you'll be calling the GP certificate or the portal certificate. In our example, we created a GP certificate called LSVPN GP certificate, which was signed by the intermediate certificate, and we called it in the SSL TLS profile. So now the portal configuration. So under network GlobalProtect portal, you can define your portal. You can give it a name. You have to define the interface which will be used to communicate to the satellite and the IP address as well. Under the authentication tab, SSL TLS profile which you have configured, call the TLS profile over here. And before 10.1 for client authentication, we can use a dummy authentication profile, but it's not used for auth. From 10.1 onwards, so 10.1, I'm talking about the PAN OS, satellite uses satellite cookie to authenticate with the portal. Therefore, user and password is username and password is now mandatory. Also, both satellite and portal should be on 10.1 to support satellite cookie. They cannot be on a different version or a lower version. You don't have to configure certificate profile on the portal. In our example, we have used local authentication. The next important thing is the satellite configuration. Under this, we add the satellite serial number and the gateway information. So the satellite, the firewall, which will be actually authenticated to the portal, we have to define the serial number, and also we have to define the gateway information over here. So once it authenticates, portal will be sharing that gateway information with the satellite. Here we are using LSVPN intermediate certificate to sign the GP cert or the portal cert. So we are calling that under issuing certificate. And under the trusted root CA, we have called intermediate CA and the LSVPN root CA, which we configured, the complete chain. So once portal is configured, portal will be listening on TCP portal IP and then on port 443 socket for HTTPS, processes satellite register request, processes get satellite cert request, processes portals get satellite config request. Portal configuration includes list of gateways. If you have multiple gateway, it will have multiple gateway information, portals config refresh interval, and the trusted root CA. So let's quickly check the configuration on the portal. So this is our portal. So I created an interface. If you remember a topology, 192.168.10.1. This is the interface configured 192.168.10.1 that will be communicating to the satellite. Call it under LSVPN zone. Data plane should allow traffic for these three web applications at least. So under the portal, I created a policy. So as it is on the LSVPN zone, so I created an LSVPN to LSVPN and allowed everything. I do have a trust to untrust policy as well, but then this is for a different zone traffic. So the policy for communication between satellite and the portal, this is the policy. So instead of calling only those four specific application, I've called all the application, and action is allowed. Certificates, I configured certificates. Sorry, device. So I defined a root CA and an intermediate CA. Then I defined a GP cert for portal. You can see common name is the portal IP address. I also called a GP gateway cert over here. This is the gateway certificate. If you remember the topology, gateway IP is 192.168.10.3. I have also called it generated a certificate over here, and then I'll use this certificate, export it, and call it in the gateway firewall. So for now, we have, this is the certificate chain, and this is the portal certificate, which we'll be using in the TLS profile. Under the SSL TLS profile, I defined an SSL TLS profile called the GP certificate, the portal certificate over here, and define minimum and maximum version of TLS over here. The next important part is the portal configuration. Let's go network. Portal. So I give it name as LSVPN portal. Define the IP address that will be communicating with the satellite. Is only defined on IPv4, and I call the IPv4 address over here. Under the authentication tab, I call the SSL TLS profile, where is the portal GP certificate, and we are using a local authentication. So I have defined a local authentication and an auth profile. And if you want to check the auth profile, this is the auth profile, and I'm using local database. So under authentication, local auth, and using local authentication and for the auth profile. So general, where we define IP and interface information. Authentication, we define TLS profile. And the next one is satellite. Here we define the satellite information, that is the serial number and the gateway information. So how to define that? You can just simply add, give it a name, then define the serial number. If you want to define user group, and also define the gateway information the satellite will be getting from the portal. So here in my case, I named it as satellite. This is the serial number of my satellite firewall. This is the satellite firewall, and this is the serial number of it. I just defined a user, and here I defined a gateway. I gave it a name. I gave it name as GW or gateway, and define the IP address. You can also set up a routing priority. So I just give it as 1. If you want to define multiple gateway, you can just simply add. You can just define as gateway 1. You can mention FQDN or IP address. So for example, if just for example sake, and you can just like a different routing priority. So I can define multiple gateways as well. All right. Trusted root CA, that root CA chain I created, I call it over here. It's very important. And the next part is the issuing certificate. I signed my GP certificate from LSVPN Intermediate CA. So that is my issuing certificate. So I've called it over here. I'm not using any OSCP responder. This is the validity period and the certificate renewal period. That's the configuration you need to define on the portal. Okay. So we have discussed the objectives. So how, like, these are the portal satellite to portal connections. From satellite to portal, we'll see a get satellite config request from satellite to portal. Satellite, we have a process called sat d process, request for the portal config and sends satellite cookie, which was introduced after 10.1. Portal's SSL VPN process responds back with the portal config that includes info about the gateway. The next request is satellite register request. Satellite sends its serial number, host information, etc., and satellite cookie to the portal. Portal validates the serial number against the config and registers the host. If you remember, we defined the serial number. That's how it is validating. Then the next request is get satellite request. Satellite sends serial number, CSR, and satellite cookie information to the portal. Portal validates the request, sends CSR to SSL manager process for certificate signing. The signed satellite certificate is sent back in the response. Portal satellite register request. So in the satellite, you can review this information under the SAT-D logs. So if you want to check the SAT-D logs, you can log into the firewall and run a command less mp log SAT-D log, and you can actually see this information. So you can see portal information over here. You will see satellite registered to portal and the IP address information, the serial number information, the host information. That is the information being sent to the portal. Under the DP session, you will see a session between satellite and the portal. That will be an SSL connection. System log will not give you any specific system log for satellite. If you go under the system logs in the satellite, so satellite is 158. So when it is trying to connect to the satellite, you will see an event only, that is SAT-D portal connect started. That's it. GlobalProtect log. So the GlobalProtect log under the monitor tab, there is no specific GlobalProtect log for satellite. For the satellite register. GP portal logs continue. An active data plane session. Under the SSL VPN access log, you can see a post request for satellite registered ESP. So less MP log SSL VPN access log, you can actually check this information. If your satellite is unable to connect to the portal, check if it is actually sending these requests or these in these logs or not. You can also take a AppWeb3 SSL VPN log debug, and you can get more detailed logs when it is trying to connect or register SSL manager log. You can also take a SSL manager debug log. In that, you can get the detailed debug logs for the satellite register request. You can see information like this is, for example, we have actually pasted the log from SSL manager. You can also in future, if you are troubleshooting, you can also search with this keyword span store satellite info request print or serial number, host name. So you can find if the request was generated, was the serial number initiated. Sometimes there could be an issue with the serial number, a typing mistake on the portal itself. So you will see all this information over here. Under the system logs, if you want to filter out, you can filter the system logs with event ID EQ SSL MGR satellite info inserted. For GP logs, event ID EQ satellite portal login. Okay, get satellite cert requests. Under the SATD logs, you will see these kinds of log for get satellite cert. So when the satellite is requesting, you will see it is requesting from the IP address of the portal. You will see a response. There will be an active SSL DP session. Under system and GP log, you won't see much information for get satellite cert request. SSL VPN access log, you can see the post request for it. Post request will be get satellite cert.esp. And for more detailed log, you can run a debug for app-web3 SSL VPN log. Under the debug, you can see, if you see here, satellite info found, portal name, serial number, host information, all these detailed information. More detailed debug SSL MGR logs. And for system logs, event ID EQ SSL MGR cert join success. And GlobalProtect logs, event ID EQ satellite portal get cert. So you can use this filter to check the logs for that. The next one was get satellite config. Under the SATD logs, you can see here for satellite LSVPN satellite IPsec tunnel and LSVPN satellite IPsec tunnel gateway information. Whatever the gateway IP what we configured, you will see it over here. There will be an active SSL DP session from satellite to portal. System and GP log will not show you detail about these. You can see a post request. Post request will be get satellite config.esp and a detailed debug log under app-web3 SSL VPN.log. GP portal log. Continue. So we have SSL MGR log. You can also take a debug and get a detailed information for get satellite config request. System logs doesn't have information, but for GlobalProtect, you can check the event by running this filter event ID EQ satellite portal get config. And yeah, so make sure you also check the status. So if it is a successful connection, you see status as success. Okay. Okay. The next one is gateway. So gateway will have security enforcement for the traffic. The bare minimum, as we were discussing for portal and satellite, the bare minimum configuration was the interface first, and interface should be able to communicate to the satellite. Here, for example, we have configured an interface. We have given an IP address and called it under zone. You have to define a tunnel interface on the gateway. This is a tunnel interface that would be used for IPsec tunnel termination. Okay, IP address on the tunnel interface should be configured because GP gateway will use it for the tunnel monitoring and dynamic routing. In this example, you see in the screenshot, we created a tunnel interface called tunnel.37 on the GP gateway, and we also defined an IP address. For tunnel monitoring, go to network profiles, monitor, and create a monitoring profile. Here we created a LSVPN tunmon. We define action as failover and interval and threshold 3 and 5. This is the default setting. Also, this is an optional setting. Certificates, device certificate management. CA certificates, LSVPN root CA is the CA certificate that signed the LSVPN intermediate CA. Both can be used to sign a certificate. We defined these two certificates on the portal firewall. I exported those certificates and then imported in the gateway firewall. Server certificate, which is a gateway certificate which we configured. So LSVPN intermediate signed that LSVPN GP certificate, which will be used on the GP gateway as a server certificate. We also need to define a certificate profile. LSVPN intermediate CA will be used on the certificate profile that would be used to request the satellite certificate and authenticate the satellite. I'm using intermediate CA because I'm using intermediate CA to sign my server certificate on the gateway. Issuing certificate, as an example, we will use LSVPN intermediate certificate as the issuing certificate to sign the satellite certificate. We need to define a SSL TLS profile here. We defined SSL TLS profile and called the GP certificate signed by intermediate certificate over here. Minimum maximum version TLS 1.0, and it can go to any maximum TLS version. So certificate profile, under the certificate profile, we need to define the certificate chain. So as I have root CA and root intermediate CA, I call both the certificate in this. I call the complete chain. So this will be used on the certificate profile that would be used to request the satellite certificate and actually authenticate it. Okay, the next part is the gateway configuration. So before going towards a gateway configuration, let's halt this session. Let's take a short 5 to 10 minute break, and then we will talk about the gateway configuration.
That's great. Can you go ahead and stop sharing for a moment? I'll take over.